Shiur is for a first name of Shifra Simcha Bat Yeta, Chaim Ben Braina, and all Cholim of Klal Yisrael. So we continue. We're going to finish off the malachas of winnowing, selecting, and sifting. So if I say it in Hebrew, you guys may be more familiar with it. There's zoreh, which is winnowing, which is throwing in the wind. Lizrok in Hebrew, the word lizrok means to throw. So zoreh is a derivative, and then borer, which everyone knows is selecting. Everyone did it, and meraked, which is sifting. Okay, so to finish off, let's just there we go. Okay, one may not wash dirty fruits or vegetables if most people are unlikely to eat the fruit in such an unclean state. Unwashed food, which is nevertheless regarded as eatable, may be rinsed in the normal way, even if it is not for immediate consumption. One may not use a sink strainer or a sink tidy, which prevents lumps from falling down the drain. Although a type of separation is taking place, one requires neither the water nor the solids, but the prevention of the drain from becoming blocked. It is also permitted to place a filter over the faucet, over the tap, to ensure that no worms are emitted with the water. And the last point here, which is further examples of prohibited selection are: A, removing fat from soup. There are permitted methods, by the way, which will be discussed, which we discussed earlier. Removing fats from soup, there's a way to do it. Removing oil from sardines, separating fried fish from cooked fish, choosing clothing from a drawer on Friday night to be worn in the morning, and using a potato peeler as a utensil. So certain things you have to do Erev Shabbos just to be safe. That's the finishes those malachas.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll go back to the thing about separating oil from soup. We'll do that. We'll try. I don't want to take too much time because I need to find it in the book. I'll try to do it maybe tomorrow for a minute, for less than a minute. Okay. I'll put the book here. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, good.
Welcome.
All right.
Just try to mute.
Hi, Cranberry. I tell you, this cat was sleeping, and like clockwork, the minute there's a shear, she's up and at it. Okay. All right, Kev, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Now, I just want to read for a minute or two from Derech Hashem first, before we send the next link. I'll just tell you guys where we are. We've got the translation by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, which is probably the best translation that you're going to have, because Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan was an absolute genius. He also died young, like the Ramchal, and he's written some amazing book. His is a favorite for me translation. All right, so now we dealt with God's imperative nature, meaning that not only is that his existence is imperative for every other creation, but in fact, there is no existence without him. He is existence, and yet he's not limited by existence for anything, not limited on any other force whatsoever, as Gavin quite astutely said. So now we're talking about the concept that God is the one, is one. It's simplicity, the unique unity. So it says on page 33 of Fundamentals, is it's likewise necessary to know that God is absolutely simple, having no parts to him. At the same time, all types of perfection are present in him, contained in his being, without being separate parts of it. We can try and understand this by observing the human mind that has many different faculties, each with its own area of activity. For example, memory is one domain, desire another, and imagination still another. And none of these faculties impinge on the other. Memory, for example, has its own domain, as does desire, and desire does not penetrate the domain of memory. nor does memory enter that of desire. So just to give you an example, when the Ramchal was around, he was around, I think, in the 1750s. I'll double check exactly when. So
Yeah, it's right at that top.
the modern advancements in terms of physiology studying and anatomy, you must remember when it came to Leonardo da Vinci, is that he used to kidnap corpses and dissect them and do artistic diagrams to show you the arterial vein structures and various components of muscle tissue and brains, etc. So I think he was around when, obviously, towards the 18th and 19th century, medicine started to develop quite significantly. But it's still nowhere near where we're dealing with the 21st century. But even in the 21st century, we can say that the Ramchal is absolutely accurate. What do we mean accurate? Is that the brain, you've got your neocortex, you've got your frontal lobe, you've got your temporal lobe, we've got the cat. Hang on a second, guys.
I don't have a cat. I don't have a cat. Sorry, and neither does Kevin. Just I wanted to point that out. We have the front cortex lobe, whatever it's called, and we have the back one, and we have everything.
I had a Kit Kat yesterday.
Okay, so Kevin's halfway there.
So what we see is that in the human mind, even in terms of organ composition, any physical creature has got multiple organs, from the pancreas to hepatic to renal, etc. So we are consisting of parts, and those parts work together to have a functional whole. I mean, when I address Kevin, I don't say, is this Kevin's kidneys? We see it as a whole in the sense that the composite part of the organs form Kevin in this finality to be able to function, but God is not comprising of limitations nor parts. All right, we're going to begin the shiur now.
Damon, I've got to go at 7:43, eh? I've got to leave the shiur.
Okay, David, it's fine. I won't add anything. We're not going to have enough time. Go ahead.
All right. So you've got to leave at 7:43. Which time? Israel time or South African time?
South African time. I've got a student at 7:45. So,
all right.
So we've got an hour. Okay.
Oh, you got an hour. Can I just make a comment then quickly just to that thing? We've got time. Just 1 second. So just on the parts. So one of the things that I've learned, not directly from Derek Hashem, and I'm glad you brought it up there. I've forgotten about it from there. But one of the big things about parts is that with Hashem comprises absolutely 0 parts. And what's the more something comprises parts, the more it's prone to make mistakes and to have problems. And that's why we as human beings who are made up of all these different parts, that's why we have liver problems, we have heart issues, I've got stomach issues, back issues, all of this because we're all made up of parts. If we're all just one part, it would be far simpler. But it's hard to make something simple. If you give a drosh over, if it's an hour, it takes you, a certain amount of time to prepare. But if it's going to be 10 minutes, you have to be absolutely spot on because it's such a short period of time. So it's the same thing here. If something's made up of a lot of parts, it's very complicated and it's prone to break down. Whereby if it's made up of one part, like a chef, that's why he functions indefinitely and for perpetuity forever. All right, sorry, thanks.
No, I think
some of its parts, Damon. Some of its parts, or some of our parts. Would you say that for us?
So what I think is the actual understanding is what Gavin's saying is a valid point, and I think the Ramchal will bring it, because what's the point of bringing this discussion of parts and one, etc.? It doesn't make any sense unless you're trying to make a valid point, and Gavin made that valid point. When we say Hashem, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, what we mean is that everything that's in the universe is part of God's consciousness, meaning there is no separateness. So there's 2 parts. There are 2 issues. The one issue is that, as Gavin said, the more parts there are, the more likely there is for things to go wrong. If you look at companies that have broken down, you've got your marketing side, you've got your R&D, research and development, you've got your IT and technical side, accounting, human resources, etc. And the more sophisticated a company is, the longer it takes to make certain basic decisions. And that's why you had issues like Lehman Brothers and all sorts of companies that, if you study that, when they actually finally went into liquidation, it took them a week to go into liquidation from being financially strong. Because if you're very top heavy and there's so many components, your ability to react in time and be streamlined. In other words, Gavin is saying your functionality is impaired. The more parts there are, the more these things have to cooperate and work together. And the more
so they have to be able to communicate, and they lose, as soon as they lose the ability to communicate, to communicate, as soon as you've got a whole bunch of parts and they're not able to communicate effectively together, then it's prone to failure, which is like human beings. We're all separate parts, and that's why we don't kind of get along.
Correct. And our organs can fail because they don't start working with each other. Just one point I want to make on Derech Hashem, and then we've got to hit the shir. And that point is as follows, is that we also need to see it as everything is part of God consciousness. Meaning, and I think Rabbi Tatz explained this analogy, that I'm having a dream and Arthur's sitting next to me on a park bench. And I say, Arthur, isn't this strange? We're in different parts of the country. And Arthur's saying, nonsense. Where do you get that from? I said, I'm telling you. He's saying, what are you talking about? You're on a park bench with me and this is real. And I said, no, it's not real. And Arthur slapped me in the dream. He slapped my thigh. And I said, that hurts. Because in the dream, I can feel things, etc. But it's all part of my imagination. So that's what I loved about the movie The Matrix, is that how do we know we're not dreaming now? How do we know
this is reality?
How do we know it's reality? How do we know that just like we wake up from a dream after a night's sleep, that after death, after 120 years, we don't wake up and say that was a nice dream? In other words, it's a program. It's just binary code. You're born into a certain environment and you get tested. We're in a computer game. We're in a virtual reality computer game. That's all we're in. We have the appearance of choice. It's not real.
So, I remember when I was younger, I once went to a camp, sort of just a weekend thing. And there were a few of us there. There was one guy in particular, and he kind of had the same sentiments as me. He wasn't the brightest out, but he said that, how do we know we're not living in a dream? How do we know this is not a dream? And then one of the other things that came up is, how do you know, this is what I raised. He raised that, but what I raised is even more complex. How do you know you're not the only person in this whole world, and the whole world, as soon as you turn the corner, the world continues moving. As soon as you go away, it doesn't actually function. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like Truman. Do you ever see that movie Truman?
Sure, the Truman Show, sure. Yeah.
Truman Show. So something along that line. Before the Truman, I didn't get this idea from the Truman Show. The Truman Show got it from me, but they never spoke to me. So I don't know. It was miscommunication. So they got it right though. But so bottom line is, how do you know that you guys actually just disappear when after we finish this year, you guys just don't exist? I only come around when every time I have the show, or every time I see you guys, And you guys, Kevin, he's got a teaching practice in Israel. How do I know?
How do we know that cat isn't actually given the shiur? Not that Damon's projecting it's like the cat's a ventriloquist, and using Damon as the platform.
No. Listen. We got no idea. So listen, guys. I think the best is for us to stop doing this on Zoom and try to do this in person. It's going to help a lot. Yeah.
All right, let's concentrate on the Gemara shiur. But just one thing is that there was somebody with a serial killer, and he said, "You're all part of my imagination." And the fact that I killed 10 people is part of the imagination. They said, let's see if you can unimagine the electric chair that's going for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to.
Shocking thought, that.
Shocking thought. All right, guys, let's go to the shiur. So how did we end off? Very simply, we ended off where Rav David's defense against Rav Papa said, listen, I'll tell you what we're talking about here. He was saying very straightforwardly, when we say that if it attacks humans, it's muad, but with animals, it's not. He's saying, no, we're only talking about a revision to tam status, meaning if it's known that an animal was in a situation with another animal after being observed, and it was the default position is if it's assumed to be, if it's muad for a person, it's definitely muad for an animal, because a human's got divine destiny, divine protection, and intelligence. So it's muad for an animal, but if it's observed by witnesses, as having refrained from a conflict with on 3 different occasions with another animal, it's tam with regards to an animal, so retroactively it's made it to Shuvah, it went to obedience school, but it's still muad regarding people. So that's how we ended off. And now there's a question. There's a question against Rav Zavid because the Mishnah in the Gemara is going to challenge this view. So how did they challenge it? They said, look, there's a brisa. And in the brisa, Sumchus says, an ox that is muad regarding people is also assumed to be muad regarding animals because of the following kol v'chomer. If regarding people, the ox is muad, because of a human being's ability and intelligence to foresee danger more than an animal's, and the brains to actually get out of the way and not have a conflict with another animal, and also divine protection that Hashem would not want him to die, he will not die. Then regarding animals, is it not certainly muad because an animal doesn't have that sort of advantage? So what the Gemara is saying is that, look, Sumchus says this, and this would agree with Rav Zavid's opinion. Now, surely when you read this at first, it seems, well, that's great. Rav Zavid has Rav Sumchus in his corner. Isn't that good? Isn't that good? Sure. So the problem is that it's Sumchus versus the Tana Kamma. So the Tana Kamma is the general rabbinic opinion, anonymous opinion, meaning if it's anonymous, it's not a lone opinion. When you have sometimes you have 2 people arguing in the Gemara. You might have Rabbi Talfan and the rabbis, or Rabbi or Sumchus and the Tana Kamma. And what does that mean? Is the Tana Kamma is the general opinion of the rabbis, Arthur. It's anonymous because it's not a distinct opinion. It means they all agree. Well, that's mostly what they agree. That's why it's anonymous. It's what you call a unilateral agreed point of view. So if I say, good news, Arthur, I found one person that will accept your business theory. One person. Unfortunately, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and all the rest of the entrepreneurs don't accept your theory, but there is some guy in Australia that made $1 million selling hot dogs, and he agrees with your theory. There's something that's a little bit problematic. Why? Nobody wants to, and God forbid I'm comparing Sumchus to the hot dog seller. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that when you've got everybody agreeing with your opinion, and then you've got a lone dissident, you're not worried. When your opinion is with the individual opinion, but every other rabbi in general holds the other way around, that's not a proof for you. That's a proof against you because the rest of the rabbis don't hold in that position. So what the Gemara is saying is Sumchus holds by you, which is great. Only the thing of it is the Tana Kamma doesn't, which is the majority of rabbinic opinion. So how do you explain that, Rav Zavid? I'm just going to read the rest, but I'm just explaining it in my own language, if that makes sense. So, just give me a sec. What we are saying is that the Gemara now is going to defend Rav Zavid. What's going to be his opinion to this, guys? What do you think? Do you remember?
I'll just moving. Sorry, just repeat the last question 1 second.
So what do you think Rav Zavid's comeback is? He's going to have to explain. He's going to have to explain what this case is regarding in order to have him backed up a certain extent. All right. Do you remember what
Damon, are you talking about that the animal that the ox can be reclassified as a tum after being what? Can be revert back to tum status?
Yes. So are you saying is that what Sumchus is talking about? Is that what you're saying?
I can't answer you.
Okay. No. So Kevin's actually got the right answer. He stumbled upon the right answer. because Rav Zvid was saying, look, let me be very clear with you guys. If it's muad regarding people, it's definitely muad regarding animals, okay? Because it's much harder to kill and injure people because of divine protection and intelligence. So it's for sure muad regarding animals. How do I respond to Rav Papa's attack against me? I'm saying that I would agree that the Mishnah statement is saying that it's muad for animals, it's tam for animals and muad for people if it's observed that it's tame and it hasn't reacted to other animals after tam. But the default position I still hold is that if it's muad for animals, it's muad for, if it's muad for people, it's muad for animals, unless there's evidence to the contrary after the fact. In other words, reversion from tam status. So he says, Rav Zvid, that when you say Sumchus is saying this, Sumchus speaks of the ox's reversion to tam status, and that's what Sumchus was saying to the Tana Kamma. Concerning that which you said, a revision regarding animals is a true revision, I disagree. So what he's saying is, look, what is Sumchus's opinion? Sumchus's opinion is exactly what my opinion is, but his is in revision. Because I'm saying this, if it's muad for people, and it's very hard to injure or kill people because Hashem protects, because they've got destinies and they've got intelligence and they've got a guardian angel, it is always muad for animals if it's muad for people. That is my position and I'm sticking to it. If we have evidence after it's been declared muad for both animals and people, it is observed after from restraining from attacking animals any further, and it's noticed 3 times, the animal portion of its muad status reverts back to tam, but it's still muad regarding people. So he's saying, I'm talking about reversion, but as far as the default position, we're taking no chances here. It's muad for people, it's muad for animals. So it says, well, Sumchus actually agrees with you, because Sumchus is saying, exactly because of that kal v'chomer of human protection, divine protection as well as human intelligence, it's muad for people, it will definitely be muad for animals. And the question is, oh great, Sumchus agrees, but what about all the other rabbis? So that looks like an argument against Rav Zvid. But Rav Zvid says, no, it's not, because Sumchus only agrees with me in a case of reversion to tam status. In other words, I'm actually disagreeing with Sumchus and I'm agreeing with the Tana Kamma. In reversion of tam status, I'm actually agreeing with Rav Papa. All I'm saying is that Rav Papa, you need to see that there's evidence with witnesses 3 times. So in a reversion situation, I agree that the obedience school could have worked, and that's fine. But Sumchus, when he's saying that he doesn't agree, when you're saying that Sumchus agrees with me, I'm actually saying Sumchus does not agree with me. Because Sumchus is talking about a revision, and he's saying in a revision, he still doesn't agree that an animal would revert to tam status. It's not a true revision, because according to Sumchus is saying that an animal is either a violent animal or it's a tame animal. Is Rav Zvid is saying, I actually don't agree with Sumchus. Sumchus is saying that there is no such thing as partial teshuvah. You can't have an animal that passed disobedience school with regards to animals and flunked it with humans. An animal's either crazily aggressive or it's calm. So that's Sumchus's opinion in terms of reversion back to tam status. And what I'm saying is, if you've got witnesses and evidence that in regards to animals, it's gone back to a tam status, I'm happy to accept it. So the Tana Kamma agrees with me, because the Tana Kamma doesn't hold that reversion of tam status is null and void. Okay, so what he's saying is, I agree with Sumchus if Sumchus is saying that is the default position unless there's evidence. But once evidence has presented itself, the Tana Kamma agrees with me, because it doesn't hold by that kal v'chomer, because evidence breaks that kal v'chomer. So now Rav Zavid is saying, actually, the rabbis agree with me. The only thing of it is the rabbis, this brisa doesn't bring what their agreement would be with regards to their actual default position in a non-tam reversion. In other words, does Sumchus hold? Sumchus would definitely hold that when if it was muad for people, it would be muad for animals. How do you know Sumchus does hold that? Because in reversion to tam status, he's saying it's muad. I don't care how many witnesses you have, unless it's refrained from attacking humans as well, it's muad for animals. So definitely, and that's when there are witnesses that sees it refraining from animals. So definitely, if there's no witnesses and evidence, and it's muad for people, Sumchus sees it as muad for animals. There's no question. The question arises is, what does the Tana Kamma say? What is the rabbi's opinion with regards to default? Does it hold like Rav Papa, that in fact, if it's muad for people, it's not necessarily muad for animals? Or are they saying that that's only in the reversion for tam process, but unless they're witnesses to the contrary, it's saying it might agree with Rav Zvid that it might be guilty for animals if it's guilty for people. We don't know. But it's certainly saying with the reversion that Tana Kamma agrees with Rav Zvid. So Rav Zvid said, listen, I've got the majority of rabbis in my corner, even though I respect Sumchus very much. Okay, so that's he deflected that. Now we are looking for evidence in terms of Rav Zvid's view, because what have we learned until this is that Rav Zvid is being attacked by Rav Papa and then the Gemara. So now we're saying, is there any support for Rav Zvid's view? Come learn a proof to Rav Zvid's reading. The disciples said before Rabbi Yehuda, if it is muad regarding the Sabbath, but it is not muad regarding the weekdays, what is the law? He said to them, for goring on the Sabbath, he pays full damages. For goring on the weekdays, he pays half damages. If you say that the Mishnah teaches, but it is not muad, as Rav Zvid maintains, all is well. For this would mean that the disciples were asking Rabbi Yehuda a question regarding this case. In other words, if an ox was seen as refraining from attacking on the weekdays, but it is known to be habitual gorer on Sabbath. And he too was answering them regarding this case. But if you say that the Mishnah teaches it's not a muad, in other words, that the disciples were stating that a muad regarding the Sabbath is not a muad regarding weekdays, as Rav Papa maintains. See, guys, this is the problem with the Schottenstein. If you say it's a muad regarding Shabbat and not muad regarding weekdays, that sounds like Rav Zvid. So I'm going to tell you that whenever you read that in the Gemara, you say is not a muad regarding weekdays, as Rav Papa maintains, because Rav Papa maintains that that is the law. Were Rav Yehuda's disciples then instructing their teacher? And furthermore, if this is correct, then when he answered that the animal is not muad regarding weekdays, what did he mean to reply to them? That was precisely what they themselves had said. Perforce the correct reading is of Rav Zvid as he had it, but it's not a muad. So let me explain this in plain English. Can I break it up for you guys? Okay, so I'm going to share the Mishnah, and then it's going to be a little bit clear. So give me 1 second, guys, to share my screen. Sorry, I've got to explain it in Damon language because I'm a simpleton, and that'll be easier. All right, so guys, I want you to read this. Arth, read a question regarding a related case.
Oh, so I just want to find where it is.
Halfway down. The question regarding the related.
A question. Okay, just point to the mouse, James. I can't seem to find it.
When he finishes, I want to just add something, Damon.
Sure.
Where's your mouse? Use your
Yeah.
mouse. Okay. A question regarding a related case. Therefore, the disciples said before Rav Yehuda, if it is a muad regarding the Sabbath, but is not a muad regarding the weekdays, what is the law? Rav Yehuda said to them, for goring on the Sabbath, the owner pays full damages. For goring on the weekdays, he pays half damages. Rav Yehuda added, and when is this animal a tam? Therefore, when does it revert to tam status? When it desists from goring on 3 Sabbath days.
Excellent. So before I explain this, and why this is an argument for Rav Zaved, Kevin, what's your question?
You see, I've looked at this, and it's a bit weird that Shabbos seems to be the only time where consecutive Shabbos is that's muad, and the weekday doesn't feature where.
I'll tell you why. It's a great question. There are 2 reasons given. Okay, the one reason given is that Jewish people are not allowed to work their animals on Shabbat, and therefore, if the animals are busy plowing fields during the week, they're too busy working hard. They don't have time to get up to mischief. When an animal is just sitting there and something's irritating it, it's liable to go a bit bossy. That's number one. Number 2, the entire town's behavior, it's explained as another reason, is different on Shabbat. In other words, the animal's routine is being messed up. If, for example, and I used this example with regards to my mom and her cat, that when she had a towel around her head after a shower, she said the cat started to hiss and get irritated because it didn't recognize my mom. So animals, if you go to animals every day in the same clothes, and then your animal doesn't see you for a week, and you come back with a beard in completely different outfits, and you've played with other animals, and you look different and you smell different, animals get worried. So what happens is during the weekday, everybody has the same routine with the animals. Animals and children need routine. The minute that routine goes away and the behavior is completely different, the animals are already on nervous ground. So when they've got a lot of time on their hands and the whole town is behaving differently, they're dressing differently, and their schedules are different, and everything is different, the animal is likely to be hypersensitive. That's the reason.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this is the case for Rav Zaved. Okay, it's saying, look, the disciples said before Rabbi Yehuda, if it's muad regarding the Sabbath, but it's not muad regarding weekdays, what is the law? So when you're reading Schottenstein, it's got a question mark, right? Because a question mark sounds like a question. So according to Rav Zaved, is that this is a question on an observable behavior, saying, look, this animal was muad for Shabbos, and during the week. This animal was naturally muad for both. But we've seen that it's been refraining itself the last few weeks from attacking on weekdays. It's totally chilled during weekdays. And because of the fact that it doesn't work on Shabbat, it's actually misbehaving on Shabbat. So they were asking the disciples before Rabbi Yehuda, this is according to Rav Zaved, what is the law when we see this difference? Okay, what is the law? And Rav Yehuda said, for goring on the Shabbat, the owner pays full damages, but for goring on the weekday, he pays half damages. So he is answering their questions because they're saying, listen, they're witnesses, and it's observed 3 times that this animal has refrained from attacking during the weekdays. Do we go back to Tam? And if we do go back to Tam, is it half payment damages, or is it still seen as full payment? Is the halacha different? Because this is a reversion back in a way from the behavior. So it's a question based on behavioral observation. So that makes sense according to the Gemara that it's asking a question form. Because Rav Yehuda adds, and when is this animal a tam? In other words, when does it revert back to the tam state? It's when it desists from goring on 3 Shabbat days. So he's answering the student's question. Why this is a proof for Rav Zaved is, if you want to say according to Rav Papa, what did Rav Papa say about the Mishnah? He's saying that the Mishnah states the law. So the law, according to Rav Papa, is that if it is muad on the Sabbath, it's not muad during the week. Okay? So firstly, the Gemara has a problem, is that why Rabbi Yehuda's disciples tell their teacher the law. Does their teacher not know the law? Does he not know that they'd have to instruct him? He's their teacher. So if you're making it as a statement and not a question, it's a problem. It's like they're telling the teacher what the law is. What does he not know? He's teaching them. And then it's saying furthermore, there's a problem, is that he answers them with the same question, with the same statement that they told him. So it's like me turning around to Rabbi Ran Cohen and saying to Rabbi Cohen, oh, you know, the law is we can't watch TV on Shabbos. and Rabbi Cohen's looking at me and he says, yes, Damon, the law is that we can't watch TV on Shabbos. So meaning, why would he answer me with the same wording that I'm giving? You'd say, obviously not. It's too mechanical in a conversation. That's what it's saying, is that you don't answer the statement word for word in the way that that statement is doing. If I'm stating a halacha to you, as my teacher, you're not going to state back the halacha word for word back to me like a robot. That's number one. Number two, I wouldn't be telling my teacher what to do. And number three, if that was the law, there's nothing we can learn from this. So in other words, in the posterity of history, if I turn around to Rabbi Cohen and say, you know what? I learned you can't cook on Shabbos. That's the law. You must know this, right? You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. And he would say, you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. It's like a kind of retarded conversation because I'm not teaching him anything he doesn't know. He's repeating the same sentence to me. And the most important point is the last point, is why would it be documented in future halacha books, the conversation that Rabbi Cohen and myself had, when in fact I'm just stating a law that's well known. So if it's going according to Rav Papa, that the law in the Mishnah is a law, then why would it have to be recorded, this conversation, as a later part of the Mishnah, saying when it desists from goring on 3 Shabbos days, it reverts to tam status? The law's already stated. Why state it twice? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So what it's saying is that you can't put something in the law books if it's already in the law books. That's the problem. In other words, why would the Gemara record this conversation between Rav Yehuda and his disciples if they just told him back a common law that everybody knows? Why is it even relevant? He knows the law, the students know the law, and then everybody knows the law. So, well, the rabbis do. So why repeat it? It's saying no. It's not like that. It's exactly according to Rav Zvid, because Rav Zvid is saying, look, generally, if it's muad for Shabbos, it's muad for Shabbos, it's muad for weekdays. Then they came to him, the students, and said to him, Rav Yehuda, listen, we've noticed that it's refrained from goring multiple times during the week. Is it still tam and muad? Is it full payment? Is it half payment? What's the law? And he said, no. If it's refrained and you've got witnesses during the week, it's tam. It's half payment. And for Shabbos, it's muad, full payment. It's a conversation. And because it's an exception to the halacha in terms of reversion, and what's the halacha? If it's muad on Shabbos, it's muad for weekdays. It's stating, according to Rav Zvid, the way that we can revert back to tam. That's why it's mentioned. Otherwise, why repeat halacha? That's all I'm saying on that. So that's a proof for Rav Zvid. Let me go on. Guys, am I explaining it okay to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Cool. So then there's another point. So now there's another proof that's going to be brought for Rav Zvid. Rav Yanai said, from the Mishnah's first segment, it may be inferred that the correct reading is that of Rav Zvid. For the Mishnah taught, for goring those creatures regarding which it is muad, the owner pays full damages. But for goring those creatures regarding which it is not muad, the owner pays only half damages. If you say that in the previous clauses the Mishnah teaches, but it's not muad, as Rav Zvid maintains, all is well. For this clause is then understood as explaining the law for cases set out in the previous clauses. In other words, what it's saying is that according to Rav Zved, the previous clauses represent three different cases. It's not halacha, it's observable cases of behavior. So in other words, they are an ox that is muad regarding its own species, but not muad regarding other species. One that is muad regarding people, but not animals. One that is muad regarding young animals, but not mature animals. So regarding these cases, the Mishnah concludes for those creatures regarding which it is muad, the owner pays full damages, okay? But for those creatures regarding which it is not muad, the owner pays only half damages. So if you want to say it's halacha, you don't have to keep saying, how many times have we learned that muad is full damages and half damages? And if it's stating halacha and it's muad, the statement is done. That's what the Gemara is saying. It's said the halacha. Why does it have to reiterate the payment damages and repeat the same thing? So the fact of it is, if they're not explicit rulings, but circumstantial, it would have to be mentioned. In other words, you only mention it if you say, look, we know what the halacha is. If it's muad with one circumstance, it's muad with another. But since we've got observable evidence that it's refrained three times, is it still muad or is it still tam? Is it a case where there's half payment, full payment? What are we doing in these extraordinarily viewed circumstances? And that's why it's not superfluous. So that's Rav Yana's explanation on this additional reason at why we hold by Rav Zved. Does everybody understand?
Yeah.
All right. So now it's going to go back and rally for Rav Papa. So it's saying, look, Rav Papa is also cautious in a way like Rav Zved, because even if you want to say that Rav Papa's ruling is correct, okay, and it's muad regarding one species is not automatically assumed to be muad regarding other species. If an ox gored another ox, a donkey, or a camel in succession, it becomes muad with regard to all species. Even Rav Papa will agree that since the animal gored members of these species, it's rendered a muad regarding all species. Because what's it trying to say? It's trying to say very clearly that the animal itself is not very particular about who it attacks. In other words, anybody's in the warpath if it comes across this animal. And since it's gored an ox, a camel, and a donkey, we even make it muad, guys. Even Rav Papa makes it muad if it gores any other creature, by the way, because it's been viewed as being non-particular for three creatures. So why would it be non-particular for a fourth? So it's saying even Rav Papa would agree with Rav Zved in that case. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just see something here. Let me just see if there are any particular. Do you guys have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Kevin, Arthur?
So it's not. If it doesn't matter if it can go any species in any order, different species, it becomes muad.
Okay,
it doesn't have to go three.
It's interesting you say that. It's not the truth, because the reality is somewhat different. What's the proof that the reality is somewhat different? Is because we're going to learn in the Mishnah's time. Is like, what happens if it goes an ox, an ox, and an ox, and then a donkey and a camel? How do you group it? Do you see it as the last three, that if it's an ox, a donkey, and a camel, it's muad for all animals? Or do you group together the three oxen first and say it's only muad for oxen?
Yeah.
Mm.
And then it's going to say the same thing with Shabbos and weekdays. What happens if it gored on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, and a Shabbos, a Shabbos, a Shabbos? How do you group it? Do you group the 3 weekdays to say it's muad for weekdays, but not Shabbos? Or do you group the Shabbos and say it's muad for Shabbos only? Or do you say it's muad for weekdays and Shabbos? How do you group it? So that's the question that we've got to ask ourselves. All right. So I'm going to read on exactly as Kevin's question is. All right. The Gemara cites a brisa concerning the ways by which an ox becomes muad. The rabbis taught in a brisa, if an ox saw an ox and gored it, saw a second ox and did not gore it, saw a third ox and gored it, saw a fourth ox and did not gore it, saw a fifth ox and gored it, and saw a sixth ox and did not gore it, then it becomes a muad to gore oxen, alternatively, in other words, every second one. So the Gemara cites another brisa, and it expands on the previous ruling. The Gemara, the rabbis taught in the brisa, if an ox saw an ox and gored it, and saw a donkey and did not gore it, okay? Saw an ox and gored it, saw a camel and did not gore it, saw a mule and gored it, and saw a wild donkey and did not gore it. It's muad to gore all species alternatively. So what we're saying in that last case is, look, it's not very discerning in terms of what it gores. It's discerning in terms of when it gores. So the first example is saying, listen, it gored an ox, it refrained. It gored an ox, it stopped. It gored an ox. So then for alternative, it's muad for every alternative ox that it gores, because that's the pattern. Here, it's saying, listen, it gored a donkey one time, then it refrained from an ox. It gored an ox, another ox a third time, then refrained from a camel the next time. So what it's saying is it's not specific with species, but it's only specific with goring alternatively all species. So the Gemara poses an inquiry. They inquired if, just hang on for me a sec, guys, I've got the creature on my, sorry guys. Can I just get the cat off? Just give me a sec.
You can just smack him against the wall, it's fine.
I'm actually tempted.
Arthur will get upset here.
He won't get
do the
upset.
same.
It's not,
I think he's going to get jealous. I think he's going to do the same. I'm just worried that he's not going to do it to his kids. That's the only problem. That was a joke. It was a terrible joke, Arthur. I humbly apologize. Take you out for a beer one day for that comment.
You know what he'll do for you for that comment? He won't do that. He will leave you with his children for a weekend.
Yeah. Listen, to leave anybody with any children is just it's something else. All right.
So then the Gemara says, all right. So what happens? It's another inquiry. Exactly, Kevin, as we discussed a minute ago. I forgot it just came up now. If an ox gored an ox, and a donkey and an ox, a donkey, and a camel in succession, what is the law? So the Gemara explains the inquiry. This last ox, the third one gored, do we group it with the oxen that preceded it, so that although it gored a donkey and a camel, still the attacker is rendered a muad regarding oxen, but is not rendered a muad regarding other creatures? Or perhaps this is the last ox, and we group it with the donkey and the camel that followed it, so that the attacker is rendered a muad regarding all species, which is what we mentioned a minute ago. Sorry, guys, I was working from memory. If an ox gored a donkey, sorry, Kev, what did you want to ask?
Practically, how's it going to be monitored? It goes 3 oxen and that goes only 1 donkey and 1 camel. How are they going to monitor? It's only time for those 2 and only muad for the ox and goring oxen. How can this process be monitored? How do you know what I mean? Or how can it be classified? How can the ox be classified?
So in any court case, you have to have witnesses. So what happens is we've got a case where, remember, that if it does, there'd have to be a pattern show before it's muad, and they would have to come to trial with witnesses. So say the owner was having a bad month, and he went overseas and he let his nephew look after this ox, and it gored 3 oxen in a row, and then a donkey and a camel. How do we group it? Do we make it the ox, the donkey, and the camel to make it muad for all creatures, or just the 3 oxen that are gored at first? to make it muad only for oxen. That's what it says. When there's a trial, how do we work? When there's a court case, how do we group them? Then the Gemara asked a second inquiry. If the ox gored a donkey, a camel, an oxen, an ox, and an ox, in that order, what is the law? So what they're saying is, does it make a difference in which order it goes, whether it's the first inquiry or the last? In other words, do we say, by the way, do we say that if it's a donkey, an ox, and a camel, it's rendered muad for all creatures, and then if it's an ox, it doesn't matter if it seems just to prefer oxen, because it's already proven to be non-preferential with regards to other animals. So we're asking basically, how do we group them, and does the order of the grouping matter? Is the preceding three groupings more important than the successive three groupings? That would determine the halacha. So there was a third inquiry. If the ox gored on these days, Shabbat, 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 Sunday and Monday, what is the law? So we do we say that the last Shabbos, do we group it with the Sunday and the Monday to make it basically muad for weekdays and Shabbat? Or do we group the three Shabbats together to make it tam for weekdays? And we say the other way around. What happens if they have Sunday goring Monday and then Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat? Do we make it Sunday, Monday, and Shabbat, which makes it muad for both weekdays and Shabbat, or do we group the last three, which are the three Shabbos? So again, it's asking the same question. Is it about the order? Okay. So basically, I'm going to have to read from my physical Gemara, guys. Give me a sec, because I can't get this creature quite off here. Just give me 1 sec. Sorry, guys, I apologize. And I brought the wrong Gemara. Give me 1 second. Guys, you know, it's all been quite straightforward, the last 2 pages. I think it hasn't been that complicated.
Not complicated. No.
Okay. So it says, what's the answer to this? So the Gemara concludes, let these inquiries stand unresolved. Okay? We don't know. That's what it says. We don't know today how they grouped it in those days. We're not sure. I would suggest a possible solution is that how they might have done it is they might have actually did it in the order of the trial, because it's unlikely that 6 sets of witnesses would have come at once. Do you agree, guys?
Yeah.
Gavin, Arthur, do you agree?
Not sure, because, you know, they summon them to come to court. You mean they wouldn't all come in front of the court in one go?
Well, I'm saying if you have those 6 different incidents, it's unlikely in most practical cases that they would all come in one trial, because your first 3 cases of drama would be your default position on how you would run halacha, because you wouldn't let it get to that stage, probably. I think. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not sure. So if the Gemara lets it stand unresolved, I'm not going to state it. So the Gemara starts an Amoraic dispute. If an ox gored 1 ox on the 15th day of this month, and another on the 16th day of the next month, and yet another on the 17th day of the 3rd month, is it muad status subject to skipping a day? Does that make sense? This is an argument with Rav and Shmuel. And we go into the period of discussing nida, actually no pun intended, and the nida period. Sorry, I didn't mean that. And that we'll discuss tomorrow. But I think we've got enough clarity so far.
So, Damon, so they're saying it must remain unresolved.
So in terms of how we group clusters of 6, yeah.
As with most Gemara, it's always unresolved. You never a solution.
No, it's not true, because I'll need to show you when you're in South Africa, where the halacha is derived. Jeff showed me where it is in the Mishnah Brura, and in the you know where it actually is. I don't know if you know the halachas by the Rambam, the Hilchat, the Mishnah Torah by the Rambam, which is how we.
Yeah, sure.
So that's the Mishnah Torah is taking every Gemara, and you've got it from Bava Kamma to every Gemara, and it deduces the halacha of how we hold.
It gives a final word.
It gives a final verdict on everything of how we hold.
Yes. Okay, Mishnah. Okay. So there is clarity. There is what's the word? There is final ruling.
There is final ruling.
It has to be. Otherwise, it's becomes a pointless exercise. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's halachas. He takes the whole of Shas in the Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, and you know who sells it? It's very popular with Chabad. Funny enough, most Chabad people have the Rambam's copy of the Mishnah Torah, which is like about 10 volumes. For some reason, in the Ashkenazi or Miznagdisha world, it's not so common, which is surprising, because I would think that book and halacha is very, very popular. I would think.
You want to know what the answer is? They found the definitive answer.
Yeah.
Things.
And in fact, Jeff said to me, and he's not pro Chabad, he said to me that they most Chabad people have a set of that for some reason. For them, it's a big deal. And for me, it's a big deal. I think there has to be a point.